Welcome back, I should say, to Touring the AFC South. I am your host, Mike Patton, and the Tennessee Titans are heading back up north this time. I would say a little bit more northeast, maybe per se, but they're heading specifically to the NFC East this time, not to the AFC East. That was a bad trip for them, 41-7 to the Buffalo Bills. They're heading to the Washington Commanders, riding a 2-game win streak. And I figured let's find out a little bit more about the Washington Commanders. And I reached out to somebody that I thought may have a great bit of insight for them. You know him as the host of the Commanders in the Chat podcast and Couch Coach Live. It is Mr. Chris Powell. What's going on, man?
What's going on, Mike? How's everything going, man?
Going great. Now, of course, got to ask you, how did you get roped into being a Commanders fan?
It was through birth. Obviously, my dad being at the time was a Washington Redskin fan, and it's just something that it grew on me. Obviously as a kid, I was like, oh yeah, that's my dad's team. But probably I want to say maybe about like 06, 07, that's when I really started loving the team, following it like on a daily basis, watching pregame, postgame shows. I really became like obsessed with the team. About 15 years from now,
Got you. Okay. All right. So I just want to give everybody a little bit of background as to your love of the Washington Commanders. Well, now the Washington Commanders, but of course, we do have to talk about the team that plays in the big space station, which is the Washington Commanders. Okay, yeah, I do call it the big space station. That's my nickname for the stadium there. Yeah. It is kind of out of this world if you look at it, and I don't know if that's in a good way, but we'll get to that another time. Yeah. But we're going to talk about the Carson Wentz experience. Yes, the Washington Commanders traded for Carson Wentz from the Indianapolis Colts this offseason as he gets his third chance to be the basically the franchise quarterback. Of course, starting off this season, 1,031 yards, 8 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and a lot of sacks that he has taken. Now, I've got to ask, do you think it's more on him that he has got sacked so many times? So I'll just say this. He did get sacked 9 times against the Philadelphia Eagles, which that was rough. Now, is it all on him? Is the O-line? Is it kind of a mixture of both?
I think it's a mixture of both. You even look at like in the Philly game where he had the 9 sacks. The majority, the lion's share of those sacks, I think, essentially belong to Carson Wentz, because I think you look at some of those progressions where he kept on pump faking and hesitant. It's not 2017. Everybody knows when you hesitant, you pump fake. You buy yourself some time. The line is also another issue too, obviously with the makeshift line that we got and just so many injuries that's going on there. But for the most part, even in the Cowboys game where essentially you didn't see the 9 sack game, but obviously he got sacked twice. And in our first 3 offensive possessions, there was intentional grounding, which you really, in essence, chalk that up as a sack as well. So there was pressure in there as well. And then I think in the Dallas game, he was pressured 40% of the time. So that's where it's kind of where it's somewhat of his fault as well too, but then also lends itself to the offensive line. And I think sometimes too, it can be deemed as like play calling as well. I think they can put him in positions for him to not be as as pressured. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. What are your hopes for him? This is his 3rd time trying to be the starting quarterback for a franchise. It didn't work out in Philly because he kind of got his feelings hurt that, Jalen Hurts stepped in. And then in Indianapolis, they just, after 1 year, were like, nah, this ain't it. Now he's in Washington. I mean, what are your hopes for him in terms of being the guy, or do you think he is the guy for the Commanders?
I think with Carson, the biggest thing, and I even talked about it like in the preseason, the biggest thing with Carson was it's not his physical ability, it's his mental makeup. It's moments where now you're looking at seeing it bird's eye view where when I see him on the sidelines after like a 3 and out and he's slamming a Gatorade cup or he's slamming objects, I already know he's done. Like I don't expect much from him because I know it's upstairs. I just want him to a point where at least I want him to be comfortable and get over those type of mental issues and realize, hey, that's a part of the game. Things are going to happen. and you just need to persevere. I think that if he can get that mental toughness and have an edge to him, like to me, like that Philly game showed me, like, well, I talked about the three tests that he was going to have, especially, going back to Philly. I'm scared to go back to Philly now because, like, just imagine if he's like that at home and, like, you got to have an edge to yourself. Like, it's almost to a point, hey, I got sacked last week 9 times or whatever. Let's go back to a drawing board. Let's show this, let's show everybody, that I'm capable of doing this. So it's mental. And if he can overcome that, and my biggest hope for him is to overcome those mental things because he's a good quarterback. He's our best quarterback we've had in over 10 years. So show it, show that, those draft picks was worth it. Show that, hey, Philly made a mistake, and we understand, I think all of us in a human element of it, I think if we were in Carson Wentz situation in Philly, I think we will all feel the same way as Carson Wentz. And then prove Jim Irsay wrong. He was the one that said, we made a big mistake off of 1 year. That would have been fuel to me. That Jim Irsay quote would have hung in my locker and to a point where I'm like, look, protect me, do what I gotta do. Let's go out here and show the world. But we're not seeing that from him, unfortunately, at this point. So,
gotcha. Well, we'll see if he can get it together. Of course, that'll start with Sunday with the Titans. But we're going to get into that a little bit later. I do want to talk about a good story for the Washington Commanders, which is Brian Robinson. He, of course, he got robbed and shot during the robbery. Thank the Lord, he was able to survive it, and he started practicing this week. So. What are you hoping for eventually when he's able to get back on the field from him?
I'm expecting big things from him. And it's crazy, going back to hearing that news, it stopped me in my tracks because obviously when I think of of someone getting shot, the first person I thought about was Sean Taylor. Like almost that same feeling, eerie feeling that I had 15 years ago. Same here, obviously when I first heard the details without knowing the context of it, just knowing that, hey, he was shot, not knowing the severity of it, that was the first thing I thought. And, and for it to happen 2 weeks before he was supposed to start was kind of one of those where it's just like, oh, it was a deflating feeling. But for him to essentially, I think, for him to get shot on a Sunday and then be able to, he didn't go to practice, but he went to the facility. And the few thing about it was because his rookie duty is to bring snacks to the running back room. And he bought snacks that Tuesday, 48 hours after he got shot. So to me, it looks like just the type of resolve. And he's going to be, I think, someone that's going to be, it's going to be a great asset to our running back room. And I expect a lot from him. I think he's going to be, obviously, I think he'll be our starting running back. Down the line at some point during this season. So I expect a lot. I think it's just a testament of just the fact of going through all that adversity. I think anything on this football field, he's going to be able to take care of. I think that this is a resolve alone in just this short period of time that he's dealt with. I think it's going to carry him a long way in this league.
All right. Now, of course, due to the shooting and him trying to get himself back healthy, he probably won't be playing this weekend. Yeah. So what do you think of the guys that are around him in terms of, Antonio Gibson, McKissick? Do you expect them to kind of pick up the load or get better, or is it more on the offensive line to open holes?
I think it's the weirdest thing where they're a unit that I think if the play calling and Scott Turner was doing what he had to do, these are good running back because you even look in the Dallas game last week where the ball was moving down the field and to a point we were like in red zone situations multiple times in that Dallas game, and they just literally just threw away the whole notion of running the football, in the red zone. So it's kind of one of those where they're like a really incomplete. They're good backs. I mean, you look at like Antonio Gibson. Last year he was a 1,000-yard receiver, and then for Ron Rivera said, "Well, we're still trying to make him, a 1,000-yard back." You can. You have those opportunities, and like you said, the line, it's banged up, and we've had makeshift lines for years. So it's one of those where I think they'll still have an opportunity. I just think they're just not utilized in the way they should, and they're not just your prototypical mom and pa's running backs of the past. these guys have they can, you get screens. You can also get these guys in first, and they can be versatile. They can, go for a pass here or there. So they're just underutilized, I think, at this point.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, of course, I do have to talk about the passing game of the Commanders. Now, oh boy, what can you say just is going on in terms of the passing game there, and just the passing defense, I should say. I'm sorry, with William Jackson and with Mr. Fuller out there. It just what else going on? It just seems like they're kind of struggling a little bit.
That's another thing where it's just like and the thing about it, and this is where and I hate to sound like a broken record, you putting guys in positions where they don't belong. Like I think Kendall Fuller, even in the first go round with Kendall Fuller here, he was our nickelback. And I think he should be essentially like a nickelback at this point. I don't think he should be guarding the likes of Devontae Smiths or CeeDee Lambs, or like your number one wide receivers. And William Jackson's, once again, he was the one that was supposed to come here and revitalize our secondary. He was someone where he did great in Cincinnati, but has that came into fruition here in Washington? Not at all. And it's crazy. And I think one of our best corners is probably Ben St. Juice. And then you utilize him as well. And it's so disappointing when you have those guys there, and because we got a solid defensive line. We got solid, and for them to get bailed out, for them to kind of get unnoticed because Kendall Fuller or William Jackson, they getting torched down the field. And even like in the Dallas game where they were just having these unexplainable penalties to a point where it's like, where's the discipline? Like it was William Jackson. He face masked I forgot who it was. I think it might have been Noah Brown last week. But I'm just thinking to myself, you had that matchup. Why are you face masking him? Like he wouldn't have got to the ball. Like why'd you do that? Like what was the point of that? So, and that's the thing too, where the discipline and then also giving up those big plays. And that's just been the biggest issue that plagued us in these first 4 weeks and then what plagued us in 2021.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, I will say this. I did listen to Teron Davenport in his podcast. He had someone that covers him for ESPN Nation, someone that covers the Commanders on. He did mention that, William Jackson is more as a man-to-man coverage guy, and they're trying to make him play zone, which that could potentially be an issue as well, which I don't quite understand why you would bring someone in that their strength is not necessarily what you run, but that's just me.
That sound like how they try to do with Josh Norman. It's eerily the same thing. I'm telling you, that's why everybody kept on saying why it doesn't work. These guys are out of position.
I hear you there. Now, I do have to ask about Chase Young. Chase Young, of course, recovering from an ACL injury. What have you heard about him in terms of his return back to the field?
I know I'm thinking, and it's kind of an odd thing where I know that I'm assuming probably going to be next week versus Chicago. I'm thinking more likely that should be the case. And I think if it was me personally, I wouldn't have him play Sunday and then turn back around and play Thursday. So at this point, I just to a process where, hey, get him on the field to a point where don't rush him back. And, especially in the way the season is going, but I'm leaning I'm thinking maybe next Thursday, potentially, it'll make his debut.
Gotcha. I'm thinking probably further than that, to be honest, the way the season's going, but that's just me.
That's true.
I definitely expect him to, kind of get ramped up into playing and then also maybe play situationally until they feel he's ready, or they may play him that way, but we'll see what happens. But of course, we got to talk about this week, and the matchup this week is the Tennessee Titans, which have won 2 in a row. That's worth noting that they beat the Las Vegas Raiders, and they beat the Indianapolis Colts, which are 2 teams that have 2 wins combined. So, not necessarily world beaters, but hey, they're doing something. And it's kind of like they found a little bit of magic going on. And what bit of that magic, the I would say the magic wand that goes along with the rest of the magic would be Derrick Henry. I mean, Derrick Henry, he just had his first 100-yard game last week. I mean, how do you plan to attack this Titans offense, especially Derrick Henry, this week with them kind of getting a little bit of their mojo back?
Yeah, it's going to be a tough ask. I mean, when we look at just far as the matches that we've had in the previous 4 weeks, we haven't had no one like a Derrick Henry, and he's coming off his first 100-yard, rushing game this season. So it's almost like it's blood in the water. So, if he's, coming off a great performance last week, you think he's definitely going to, turn that into full gear. I think essentially one of the keys is our defensive line. You look at like Jonathan Allen. I think he'll be someone that's at Alabama on Alabama matchup in a sense where, and even last week, last week against Dallas, we did a pretty good as far as our run defense because I think we only allowed like 62 yards and only I think it's like 2.8 or 2.9 yards per carry. But obviously we were talking about Pollard and Zeke, but we talking about Derrick Henry. So it's going to be a tough ask for us. My biggest thing is, hey, we be able to contain them and then have that stamina in that fourth quarter when the going gets tough. Because I know that's what they're going to try to do and wear our line out. And it's just gonna be a war of attrition. So hopefully these guys will be ready for that onslaught that is Derrick Henry.
Now we'll say that he is doing things in the running game like he usually does, but this year he's been more involved in the passing game. He's actually the fourth leading pass catcher on the Titans team right now. And that's more primarily screens and dump off patterns and stuff like that. Do you have a fear of him catching the football? I mean, I know teams look at him and catch the football, but I wonder if teams really understand or have any type of fear of him catching the football and kind of potentially taking it to the house there.
Yeah, and especially and the thing about it is once they get past that defensive line, it's literally open season. Unfortunately, the way it's to a point where he get that second layer, it's a wrap. Like it's going to be a situation where it can get really ugly. Especially, I don't think, you look at our linebacking core, Jamin Davis and Jamin Davis and Cole Holcomb. It's going to be a long night. It's going to be a long afternoon. So we'll have to pack our lunch for that one.
I hear you there. Now, of course, packing the lunch, he definitely going to have to do that against the likes of Derrick Henry. But one thing I will say is there's a nice little spread when it comes to the passing offense of the Titans, because you could have your little light stuff over here, you got your salad right here, you got other things over here, and that's what you can talk about when it comes to the Tennessee Titans passing game, because they've had 4 games and 4 different leaders in the passing game, each different game. So going into this game, I mean, how, an already struggling pass defense, how do you kind of deal with multiple weapons out there and you never know which one's going to pop off during the game?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough ask for this defense. To me, I think the biggest thing is just getting pressure to Tannehill. Like, I think if you get, that's the biggest thing to get him rattled, because like if he has opportunity to, to pass and like you said, he has a bevy of options when it comes to that. That's a nightmare for us. That could be something that could bold as, as a situation where he could break off a big play. One of the wide receivers could break off a big play off the strength of that, where we don't know what's coming. Like as far as like if he has that multifaceted passing game, that could definitely be something that is going to be really, really tricky, and something for us that it's going to be hard for us to defend.
Now, just to give everyone a little heads up, as far as the different pass catchers that have led them in passing, you got Robert Woods that has led them in the I'm sorry, let me start in order. Kyle Phillips was the first game, rookie from UCLA. Second game was Treylon Burks. Third game was Robert Woods. Last game was Chig Okonkwo. You notice in that order there, 3 of the 4 were rookies. So, yeah. So that's quite interesting. Also, the Titans are going to switch over to, of course, defense. But before we switch over to defense, you got Fuller and Jackson versus Woods and whoever, because Treylon Burks, I don't think he's going to play this week. He's dealing with a foot injury, kind of limping, and he hasn't practiced. So I'm assuming that he's not going to play this week. And it'll probably be Nick Westbrook-Ikhine and Kyle Phillips. So how do you feel about that matchup? Fuller and Jackson versus Woods, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine and Kyle and Phillips.
Honestly, it's probably our best matchup as far as receiving core that we've had this far. Like as far as a matchup as far as that we can take advantage of. We don't, necessarily have to worry about, Dallas, obviously like CD and and also, AJ Brown and also AJ Brown, yeah. Now we got to play him twice a year now. And then Devontae Smith. So, this one I think. But the crazy thing about it, even though it might be our best matchup from a personnel standpoint, but I still can't trust those two to defend. And I think, either they'll get burnt on big plays or commit these careless penalties. So it's our best matchup thus far that I think we can beat. But I'm still kind of on the fence about this matchup. But if I put it this way, if this is our best chance to showcase our secondary for the foreseeable future, because I don't see that we can take advantage of.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, of course, we do have to flip it on the defensive side of the ball. The Titans front four versus the Commanders offensive line. You got Jeffrey Simmons and Nico Autry. You don't have Harold Landry, but you do have Rashad Weaver in there. So those three right there are pretty vicious in their own right. Then you throw Mario Edwards Jr. And I don't know if Bud Dupree's going to play. He's dealing with a hip issue, so he might not play this game. But still, with those four in there, it's kind of does it make you a little nervous seeing those guys up front?
Absolutely. When you hear Jeffrey Simmons, you're like, oh boy, like you're so, and like you said, Autry, and they've been doing their thing this year. So this is another one. You got a banged up offensive line. You got a quarterback, and you just look at that, those situations of the past where, you think, there's really no week off where you look at it from a personnel standpoint, like, okay, well, this we don't really have any fierce guys on the opposing end that could cause havoc. No, this is another tough defensive line that we have to face, and it's just one of those where this is kind of one of those games where I think running will be the best for us, because obviously if you got a quarterback that was rushed last week for 40% of his throws, that's not good, because normally you think to yourself, if a quarterback's getting rushed like 40%, how on earth he's going to be able to even do anything? So I think, especially with this line, I think running might be the best thing. Run, get screens, get your running backs active, because this is another fierce defensive front that I don't think we're going to be as pass happy as fans and other people will want it to be.
Gotcha. Yeah, definitely. If they throw the ball for 40 times this time again, I mean, honestly, just to give everybody a kind of a viewpoint here, I believe Carson Wentz is throwing it almost 40 times, if not more, 40 times or more every game this season. Yep. That's not a good recipe to win, especially with Carson Wentz, going superhero sometimes. And then also with, just basically pinning the ears back of rushers, basically pinning their ears back and rushing him the entire game. That's not a good combination at all. Now, let's see. As far as you did mention kind of ways to keep them off balance as well. But I want to go to the secondary, which that has been a place where the Titans have been able to be taken advantage of. So how do you like it? I think Jahan Dotson might be out this game. So you still have Scary Terry out there. So I still think they have weapons. How do you attack this secondary that's kind of been much maligned to kind of start the season so far at the Titans?
I think it's almost, and it's funny. I look at these matchups almost like we're like the Titans. The Titans and the Commanders are a lot alike as far as how as far as their schemes and everything is so far in a sense. Where I think you talk about Ryan Tannehill's success in the first couple games was having a plethora wide receiver options. And I think this is another one where even though you may not necessarily have Jahan in this game, but you also still have some good wide receivers. Obviously, also we talk about Terry. I think Curtis. I'm thinking he's gonna play. I think he did practice today.
It's looking like it.
It's looking like he's gonna play. He's the East Coast Deebo Samuel, our little poor man's Deebo Samuel, but he's my guy. But then also you still got other wide receivers like De'Ami Brown. This is an opportunity for De'Ami Brown to potentially shine, and also Cam Sims. So we have formidable wide receiver, weapons. Even though Jahan is out, but I still think, and that's good. I think we still have that's probably the most favorable matchup that we have in this game. And then considering the fact, like a guy like Matt Ryan went off last week. Matt Ryan had a pretty good game last week. So to me, I'm like that was pretty that's pretty encouraging for us at this point. So I think this probably by far will be the matchup that's favorable on our end.
Got you. Now, we'll say this, though. Matt Ryan went off, but he went off to the tight ends. Molly Cox got busy. So, I'm pretty sure your tight end, Logan Thomas. Logan Thomas, yeah. I still remember him as a quarterback at Virginia Tech. But
right.
Yeah, as far as Logan Thomas, he's got to be potentially licking his chops looking at this.
Yeah.
But however, I will say last week, one of the reasons that the tight ends for the Colts got off was because Amani Hooker was there. Amani Hooker didn't play for the Titans, and he's basically their tight end stopper. He's the guy that covers tight ends a lot.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of questionable. I think he's coming off a concussion, so I'm not sure if he's going to play this week or not. So, let's see. One other matchup I was going to look at too is you got Scary Terry versus Christian Fulton, who is the best Titans corner. So that'll be a matchup within the game to kind of keep an eye on right there. So, how do you? I see Fulton trying to do his thing, trying to hedge his way to be, mentioned among top corners in the NFL. Of course, he did have a few hiccups along the way this year. Hey, who doesn't? He's a corner. You're going to get beat sometime. But, I wonder, what do you think of that matchup between those two? Do you think it's a pretty even matchup, or do you think Scary Terry's got the advantage?
I think Terry. I think Terry got the advantage in this matchup. And I think, especially with him, I think these 4 weeks have been pretty rough for him in the sense. Obviously, even in the Philly game, he did get over 100 yards in receiving in that Philly game, but it was in garbage time. So a lot of people consider that like empty calorie type of stats. And then last week was pretty much wasn't really a good performance for him as well too. So I definitely think this is a week where he's going to really kind of revert back to his old self and take advantage of the matchup.
All right, we'll definitely see. Now, of course, he does have 250 yards receiving so far, and it is 17 games. So, if you add that up until 16 games, that's 1,000. So he's on pace to have about 1,100 yards this year. So we'll see what happens. But of course, that's the end of my questions for this episode. But we do have a game. 5 questions, 2 answers. You got to pick one. Now, one of these questions we got 3, but we'll get to that one later. But 5 questions, 2 answers. You got to pick an answer. Are you ready?
Yeah. Let's go.
All right. Let's see. Mark Rippon or Doug Williams? Which quarterback are you going to pick if you got to win one game?
Get Mark Rippon.
Man, I'm telling Doug Williams on you, man. But I'm kidding.
Me and Doug cool. We cool. Me and Doug cool. I actually met Doug before. Yeah.
I haven't met him before.
Cool.
I just was kidding.
Yeah,
But
cool.
Let's see. We got John Riggins or Clinton Portis. Old school versus new school.
Give me Riggo.
All right.
Give me Riggo.
I sense a theme here. Now, of course, we've got the late Sean Taylor or Darrell Green. Which one?
Oh, come on, man. Yikes! Like,
hey, I did my research, man.
I'm gonna put it this way: give me Sean T, and I think just because I think of the what if factor, because I think he would have been Darryl Green-esque. So okay. Yeah, from a what if standpoint, so I'm gonna preface that way.
All right. Okay, you've got to pick one team to cheer for, one game. Is it going to be the Giants, Eagles, or the Cowboys?
Oh boy.
There's no cop-outs on this one too, by the way.
Oh, for sure. No, I'm gonna answer the question. Yeah, she's got to give me like a few seconds to marinate on that. We definitely know it ain't Dallas, so it's gonna either be the Giants or the Eagles. You know what? The Giants. It'll be the Giants.
Okay. Just don't tell nobody up there though.
For sure.
All right. The last one. I'm gonna give you a music one.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna go the Clips or Wale. Which one you riding out to?
Oh.
Make the right answer, man.
It's gotta be, you know what? Because I'm from VA. These my guys from VA as well. Give me the Clips.
There you go. There you go. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, they my guys from the 757. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I still listen to that first album, the album with the little Hundred Spokes on it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no doubt.
All right. Well, before we get you out of here, man, I got to get your prediction and what you think the score of the game is going to be.
All right. I think the Commanders are going to win this game 21-17.
Ooh. Man. All right now. Well, we definitely I'm gonna play this tape back, you know, as soon as the game. I'm kidding. I'm not gonna play it.
Yep.
But yeah, we'll definitely keep a note on that. I think it'll be an interesting game. It'll be very dependent upon a couple different things. Well, one thing in one place, and that'll be the trenches. That always tells the story.
Yep.
So, all right. So we have reached the end of the show. I want to thank you for coming on. And what I also want to do is give you the floor, kind of tell everyone what you're working on, what you got going on, where they can find you on social media. Go ahead.
All right. Appreciate it. Once again, appreciate the opportunity. So check out my main podcast, Couch Coach Live. We have that on Wednesdays, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. You can check us out on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, under Couch Coach Live. Then also my Washington Commander-centric podcast, Commanders in the Chat. So we have our shows on Sundays after the game. We'll do it now at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. That'll be our post-game show. And it just depends on our matchups, but normally we'll do our previews on Thursdays at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So, yeah, so that's what I got going on. So, once again, appreciate you for having me on tonight.
All right. And where can people find you on social media?
So pretty much personal, Facebook, Facebook, Chris Couch Coach Powell. And then also the shows, Couch Coach Live, and then also Commanders in the Chat, which is going to be Commanders ITC. All
right. Well, thank you for coming on. Before we get out of here, of course, we have the tour in the AFC South inbox. We got a note from Damian Adams. He said he's got Tennessee winning 21-7, and it's a tough game to pick.
Look, DA has been picking against Washington all year. I want to make him wrong at least twice in the last 5 weeks. So he been doing my boys dirty though. But it's all love.
Oh my goodness! Now we'll see what happens. But definitely. Thank you for coming on. Thank everyone for tuning in to Touring the AFC South with your host Mike Patton. We're out.